did you decide to write an anti-Islamic book?
After high school, I went to university and I did comparative religion. And the remarkable thing, I think, was that the first day of me going to college was September 11, 2001. Already thought, okay, these Muslim guys are kind of crazy and this religion isn't my anti-Islam feelings in such a way that I thought, well, I have to become politically active to do something and stop this evil of harming our country. It was a religious book because I wanted to show people why Islam was a danger as a religion, and I wrote it from a Christian perspective. So I thought, well, this whole Muslim concept of God sounds more logical, and it's the same concept that I find in the Old and the New Testament. So after weeks and weeks of study, reading, rereading all kinds of books, I thought to myself, okay, perhaps this oneness of God is something that is true. So that's how it started. I thought to myself that she was forgiven. If you can forgive someone who kills a relative, especially a favorite uncle of you, even starts parading with parts of his body to show other people that she humiliates you and whatever you stand for, that means you have such a great character. It's very special. It's something you don't see. And that's what he did. So I thought to myself, well, it was a really special guy. And when I thought that, I thought, well, I have these arguments for him being a prophet. I see his character. I see the way he treated other people. I see how he treated his enemies. I think he is a prophet. But then I thought to myself, whoa, that's horrible, because I already accepted this oneness of God, and now I say he is a prophet. If I say there is only one God and Muhammad is his prophet, that's almost shahada. So I thought to myself, okay, let's close the books. Stop. This is going in the wrong direction. And of course, I wasn't that anti-Islam anymore because of what I read, what I saw, and what I experienced. What I tell you now, it sounds a little like a fairy tale, but it really happened. In the end, there were all these books at the table, and when I had this feeling of, yeah, okay, this is shahada in a way, I thought, well, I put all the books away and I put the books on the highest shelf, but there were so many books that a lot of books fell off the shelf. And one of the books that fell off the shelf was the Quran. And when I picked it up, my hand was on a page with Surah 22, Ayat 46. And it says, it's not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts. And I thought to myself, that really is my problem, because it wasn't the eyes. I really could see what I written down myself. Nobody forced me to write this book. Nobody said you have to write this or that. I started writing myself, and I could see it with my own eyes, but I still couldn't accept the fact that I said he is a prophet, there is this one God. I just couldn't. So it wasn't my eyes that were blind, but it was really my heart. I couldn't accept it. I think my nafs or whatever, my ego, I couldn't accept it. And I said, well, God, I don't care if it's the God from the Bible or the Quran, give me a sign or something so that I 100% sure know this is the way. And I went to bed, but when I woke up, I felt very secure in myself. I really felt very secure. I've never been more secure about anything else. The whole anxiety or the whole doubting issue, it disappeared like snow for the sun. And I thought to myself, well, I think I'm a Muslim. Well, and then of course I had to tell.
What was the reaction of the people around you when you became Muslim?
Most of them were very negative, of course. For a lot of people, especially some uncles and aunts, it was kind of a shock. They heard it when it was on the news. I told my mother, and my mother started crying. And my wife was pretty open. Yeah, she was very cool about it. She said, well, if Islam is what you really believe and that's in your heart, who am I? And yeah, some people from my old work were really aggressive. I got over 2,000 death threats from people who used to support me, of course, people who voted for me. People said the most horrible things. We will rape your wife, shoot you, where your children go to school, stuff like that. And most of them, of course, is nonsense because they're crazy people writing things on a computer. So it was kind of a hectic time. And I had to tell my work, of course, and it was this Christian organization. So to say that the leader of the pack, he said, I can't believe it. And he said, well, I noticed this change when you talked about certain topics on radio. You were kind of a little more mild, not so harsh anymore, but you becoming a Muslim? And after I said, yeah, I became Muslim, he said, I couldn't sleep for it for 2 days. I couldn't accept it. It was so strange. Last thing, and my old boss from the radio, he said, well, how do we know that you're not becoming Hindu one day or something else? And I told him, well, I never chose a religion. One time, and it was when I became a Muslim. Before that, I didn't choose my religion. I was born in a Christian family. I was raised in a Christian way, and I'm very grateful for all the good things that it brought.
How did you feel when you made your first salah?
It's of course a beautiful moment, but very strange as well, because as a Christian, you're not used to pray like that. You pray with your hands together and perhaps on your knees in front of your bed or something. But I think it's very beautiful that you really prostrate, so you really bow down in the deepest way for your Lord. So that's a very humbling, beautiful thing, I think, and that, yeah, it made me feel very happy.
What were the three biggest challenges you faced when you converted to Islam?
Well, becoming a Muslim, of course, was a big challenge, because I had to tell the world and family, and that was a big challenge. The part of thinking that it would be very hard to become a Muslim, because especially as a Protestant Christian, there aren't so many things you have to do in a religious sense. As a Muslim, in terms of practice, so it is required to pray 5 times a day. It's required to eat in a certain way. It is required to think in a certain way. You have to be the best in a way every moment because of your relation with your Creator, and because of the fact that you have to pray 5 times a day. It's a constant reminder in a way of the Creator, so that makes you much more aware of the fact that you have a Lord than as a Christian. That's how I experienced it. And I thought to myself, whoa, 5 times a day praying, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, I have to do so that made it hard in the head. But after I became Muslim, it wasn't hard at all.
Are you raising your kids as Muslims?
Well, you try, of course. I don't know, when you're really raised as a Muslim, I think it's a very difficult job, especially in these times.
Your heaviest and most regretful expression that you used for Islam?
I think Islam is a lie, because that's something I used to say. Islam is a lie, the Quran is poison. But when I said Islam is a lie, that's the whole religion and everything that comes with it. So that's like the highest level of jahiliyyah in a way. And of course, I do blame myself. That's something that bothers me. And that's one of the reasons that we founded an organization. It's called the IXC, Islam Experience Center. And we go to schools, primary school, high school, college, universities, but also to departments of the government, other social organizations, churches, to take away misconceptions about Islam, to share the message, to show Islam its experience as well. And we try to erase in a way the things I said and done in the past.
How should people research about Islam? Do you advise just searching at Google?
No, I would certainly not advise Google. It's the last thing I would advise. I said shut down the computer. No, I think it's very important that people read books, real books with pages and stuff. I would recommend Muhammad, His Life Based on the Earlier Sources of Martin Link's, the book I talked about earlier. It's a green book. And I think it's very important for people not just dive into the Quran, because it's a very complex book. And if you don't have anybody who can teach you what you read, especially most of the people who don't know anything about Islam are not fluent Arabic, classic Arabic speaking people. So you will read an interpretation of the Quran or a translation, and most of the time that's not the real deal, of course. So I would advise people just to study the Sirat, study the character and the life of the Prophet, because that's what the tradition teaches us as well. His life was the Quran. He was the living Quran in a way. Just study his Sunnah, and I think that is the best way of discovering Islam. I became much more happy after I became Muslim. So I would like to invite everybody to become Muslim, just because it brings peace to your soul and peace to your heart. It is the truth, it resonates with heart and soul. At least look at it from an Islamic perspective, try to read and study the life of the Prophet, try to understand what the Muslims believe, not so much the behavior of Muslims, because there are a lot of Muslims that don't live like Muslims, including myself. I don't always live like a Muslim. I should, we all do, but you should look at the example of all examples, and it was the Prophet. And if you study his life, perhaps you find guidance that leads you to the truth.